we're going to start with creaming your butter and your shortening. And I have the specific amounts listed in the class materials, so be sure and look there for the exact amounts. But for right now, I'm just going to show you. I'm putting in 3.5 cups of shortening. I use Crisco because that's what's available where I live. Hopefully you can find it easily. If not, there's other brands available, but what you want is just basic shortening. I'm gonna add some softened butter. This is room temperature butter. I only need a cup, so I'm going to add just 1 cup. And then we're gonna cream the shortening and the butter together until it's completely smooth. And you wanna beat this until all the lumps are gone from the butter. And you don't want to microwave your butter. Warm butter is going to mess with the consistency of your icing, and you don't want that. And then our next step is to add 2 pounds of sugar. I know it sounds like a monumental amount, and we're going to actually be adding more than that. So let me grab the sugar here. Take the bowl out. And we're going to attempt in a very clean, organized way to dump all of the sugar in. Hey, not so bad. Okay. So I'm sure most of you guys are expecting, hoping, maybe not hoping, no one hopes for that, the big puffy cloud of powdered sugar that would be bound to come up from using this amount in the bowl. What I like to do is use plastic wrap, and I usually use a length about this size. It needs to be big enough to fit around the bowl. I do at my home in my mixer have a bowl shield in here, and it doesn't really help cut down on the cloud, so I like to use saran wrap. What I do is I drape it around the bowl, and I really make sure it's snug right down in there, all the way around, just like that. And it's going to keep that powdered sugar explosion contained. And we'll start off on low, but we'll go high here. You can see a little bit of powdered sugar can kind of puff out the end there. But I love using this saran wrap trick. It helps cut down on the mess all over the countertop and my cabinets. And the best part is you just take the saran wrap off and throw it away, and so that's always great. I can kind of see down here, I know there's powdered sugar kind of blocking your view, but the sugar is blended in, so I'm not worried about getting the sugar everywhere. And so now we are going to scrape the bowl again, because there's going to be little bits of, whoa. There's going to be little bits of sugar and maybe butter and shortening that didn't get mixed in. And you can see right around here, little amounts of sugar that didn't get incorporated. So give it a nice good scraping. Get that little bit of sugar right down in there. And we're going to give it another spin before adding the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so that's mixed pretty well, and now we're going to add our milk, our vanilla, and our salt. And I think I forgot to mention, but the butter is salted butter, and we are adding salt. And you can see the salt is fine and powdery, and what I do is I just put regular table salt into a coffee grinder and I just pulse it for probably 30 seconds, and it makes it a nice powdery texture. That way when I'm adding salt to my icing, there's no grit. So you want just a 1/4 teaspoon of the salt. So we're going to add that. And then this is a really big batch of icing, and it's going to make a lot of icing. So we need to add the appropriate amount of extract. I've got some vanilla extract here, and we're going to add 1 tablespoon. So we're just going to dump that in. And then part of what makes crusting buttercream crust is adding that liquid. You have to be careful not add too much. A lot of crusting buttercream recipes ask for a 1/4 cup or a 1/2 cup of liquid. We are just adding 3 tablespoons. I find that the more liquid that you put into your buttercream, you run into issues with the icing getting too crusty or creping. So that's never good. And first we're going to start off on a slow speed so that the liquids don't jump up. And then once the liquids are incorporated, you can go ahead and turn it up a little. And you just want to give that a really quick spin. So we'll turn it off here. And now we're ready to add more sugar. The recipe calls for another 2 pounds, but this we're going to add slowly. I like to add about half at first, and then we will just add it a little bit at a time to make sure we get the right consistency. So I'm going to take this out, and I should give it another scrape down. I can see little bits of vanilla and milk that didn't get quite mixed in. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so now we're going to add the sugar in, and I'm going to try to very carefully add about half of it into the bowl. So hopefully that will go well. Trying to be careful, but it's okay to make messes, right? So that's about half right there, and we're going to put it right back into the mixer. Okay, so hopefully I won't have too much of a mess, but we're going to just try pulsing it. Sometimes that helps keep the powdered sugar down. So I'm just going to stir a little bit, just kind of off and on like that to avoid making all of the sugar come out of the bowl. Okay, so it's really important, I forgot to mention this earlier, to sift your powdered sugar. And it's really important because a lot of times powdered sugar is going to have little granules and little clumps. Sometimes you can pick up a bag of powdered sugar that maybe has been somewhere cold, and you bring it into your warm house, and that condensation will get into the sugar and will create little lumps, and you don't want that in your icing. You want your icing to be super smooth, and so it's always worth it to sift your icing sugar. And so now what we're going to do is slowly add the rest of our powdered sugar, and I'm just going to use this little 1/2 cup scoop right here. And typically with the consistency of the icing, right now what we have is a very soft icing, maybe okay for cupcakes. I would probably actually add a little more sugar to it, but we might use this whole amount. If you want a super stiff crusting buttercream, it's very typical to use 4 pounds of sugar, and that way you have clean, smooth icing. It can sit out for a long period of time without slumping, so that's really important. But sometimes if you add too much icing, then that does not make it ideal for piping. So you really have to think about what you are making, if you're going to be piping or just covering a cake with icing, what kind of consistency you want. I typically like a semi-firm icing. It works best for smoothing and for holding up and not slumping. So, see, I've got that little spot of sugar, and we've got some around the edge. It's really important to scrape this down. You want everything incorporated into your icing. Okay, so now I'm just going to add, this is a 1/2 cup scoop, so we'll just add a cup at a time and see what happens. And again, just start with a slow stir, pulse it a few times to incorporate the sugar so that you're not having sugar spilling out everywhere. And really, I have to say, I'm quite proud of myself. This little bit of sugar mess right here, that's nothing. You can make your messes a lot bigger, so I'm doing good so far. Okay. And got a big clump there. Okay, so as I'm scraping down, I'm kind of checking for the consistency. It still feels a little bit soft to me. So I'm going to add just a little bit more sugar. I'm going to go with 1.5 cups this time. I think that will be the one that does it. Okay. Go, little mixer, go. Okay, so now we're gonna mix it up for just a couple more seconds. We're gonna scrape it down again. That's a lot of scraping, I know. You get used to it after a while. That's why my recipe is also so large too. This is enough icing to easily ice a sheet cake, plus the borders, plus maybe a couple other small items, maybe another little small cake. You can store this icing. You can wrap it in plastic wrap and freeze it, bring it to room temperature, and just kind of remix it up a little bit. And it's perfect. So it's a really great, versatile icing. It's not fussy at all. It's not like your meringue icings that have egg whites and things have to be stabilized. It's very versatile, very, very simple. Only 6 ingredients. Back to mixing. There we go, back to life again. I'm just gonna give it just another 30 seconds. Some people like to use a little more shortening than butter, and that's okay, but you're going to kind of sacrifice on the flavor. For some people, it's really important that they have a pure white icing. Personally, for me, it's not that big of a deal. I kind of feel like this is pretty close to white. I can show you later a few tips on making your icing a little more white. But butter always tastes better, so. Okay, so we gave it a good few minutes there. And I'm going to test it again. And it feels pretty good right now. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for not something super soft that I can just run the spatula through really easy. There's got to be a little bit of resistance. So I sweep it across. I can feel a little bit of pushback when I run my spatula through. It's keeping that definite. There's no slumping. Now this consistency is good for cheat cakes, birthday cakes. Honestly, if it was a wedding cake, I would probably have added just a little bit more sugar just to make sure that that cake isn't going to melt or slump or the icing look unfresh after it sits out for several hours. But for what we're doing in our class, this is really a good texture, good consistency. Okay, so I know what to look for with consistency, but in case you have any doubts, I have a quick little tip for you. You can leave this in your mixing bowl, right in the mixer, walk away from it for a good 8 to 10 minutes, and then what you want to do is come back and test it. And so how you do that is I'm going to grab a bowl of icing that's been sitting out for a little bit longer than this. And so I've got some already made icing here. And you want to take just a piece of paper towel. And what you want to do is just take your little finger on one side and press down. So you can see there's no icing that stuck to the paper towel. If you are pressing down on your icing and you pull up and you've got icing stuck all over the paper towel, it's not crusting, you don't have enough sugar, and you need to add more sugar to it.